presentation. It's great to be here. So what I'm going to go through is some monitoring that we've been doing, which now goes back 21 years, basically looking at the long-term end-to-end monitoring of the world's networks. This is currently a collaboration with people from Pakistan, Malaysia, and Amity, which is in India. In the past, there have been other collaborators, in particular from Trieste, and also from Fertility in the US. So, this is the agenda. First of all, very briefly, I'm going to go over the importance of the internet and why it's important to monitor it. And then I will get into more detail of what exactly is PINGA, how it works, how it's deployed, where it makes measurements from and to, how the results are used, and then some examples of results you see when you apply these measurements and look in detail at what's happening to the internet. And finally, I'll wind up with comparisons with other networks and also how to access the data, which, because it's a long archive going back 21 years. So, obviously, the internet is incredibly important, so I'll rush through this. Obviously, education, the Khan Academy. Nobody uses Encyclopedia Britannica anymore. Services such as just getting a DMV license, outsourcing, marketing, Amazon, everybody uses Amazon. Well, not everybody, but most people use Amazon to get something. Your healthcare, I can contact my doctor via Kaiser, Internet of Things, Nest. In particular interest to what I've been looking at is actually trying to playing field between the developing nations and the developed nations. At the same time, of course, there's lots of scam, lots of things going on with it. There's scams, illegal hacking, security, loss of privacy. There's a long, long list, so I won't go over that. So anyhow, this is the reason that we need to measure, analyze, and understand. The thing has been one of the things that actually has helped in understanding what's going on. So the measurement mechanism uses ping. I think almost every machine installed nowadays has ping as part of the operating system. So there's no software to install the targets that we're measuring, which makes it much more simple. The host that actually does the monitoring, the measurement agent as we call it, can be as simple as a Raspberry Pi. This is one that's a version 1. Donated to Zambia, and actually currently we're working on maybe running it on an Android iPhone. In which case, not only we reduce the price, but we can think about looking at monitoring mobile sites. So we're monitoring the internet, and typically we're monitoring a lot of targets. And so that's typically, we use web servers, and very often they're at the universities are the targets. So every 30 minutes, 10 pings are sent from the measurement agent to the target, and there's about 800 targets, or 800 to 1,000 targets, depending on when you measure it. And then the target responds, or it's down, in which case you don't get any responses, and you find out it's down. This data is then sent to a repository. The repository currently is at SLAC, and it's been there for 21 years. There have been other one at Fertility for several years, and more recently there was one in Pakistan. So what the measurement basically just gives you the round trip time and the loss, and from that we deduce a lot of other things that are going on. So this is what the setup looks like. Down at the bottom of the targets, there's 800 to 1,000 monitor hosts in over 160 countries. So we're actually getting a pretty good idea of the overall internet. Many of the measurement agents, that's in are using ping to monitor the targets. The data is gathered on a daily basis back to SLAC, where it's archived, analyzed, made available by the web, and other people can go look at it. Originally, it was set up for high-energy physics. High-energy physics really, they had multiple people, multiple sites around the world in different countries who were trying to collaborate on experiments. Experiments in high physics are very expensive. They use a lot of power to power the accelerators, and then they're looking at the very smallest objects that you can see, and this costs a lot of money. So accelerators and a lot of high physicists who wanted to communicate. So we needed to understand how well it would be possible to communicate to various countries where there were high physicists. And where we were going to store the data, or we're going to have every site having its own data, but no central repository. And also where to store the code. So again, we want to know how good is the connectivity to the following sites who wish to put their hand up and say, we'll store the code for you. Is remote control possible, or is it going to be too slow? Can we reduce travel? Obviously, the beam counters were very interested in reducing the amount of travel they had to have. And so, initially, this is back in 1998, we were monitoring 12 sites in the US, and 1 in Switzerland, that's CERN, of course, 3 in Canada, and so on. We had 1 in Russia, 2, and 2 in China. So that was what we originally started from. We started in 1998. We're now monitoring about more than 160 countries, which contain over 99% of the world's population, or 99.5% of the world's internet users. As I say, there's 800 to 1,200 remote sites, monitored in greater 160 countries. Currently, we have 30 measurement agents. So here you can see the targets. You can see there the red line. We started out with about 400 targets, mainly in the developed countries, and now we're up at about 800 to 1,000 targets. That's the red line. The number of pairs, a pair is a monitoring agent monitoring a target. So the number of those is roughly around 12,000. It's a factor of 10 if we're talking about pairs. The number of measurement agents has been about 30. At one time it's almost 100. The number of countries being monitored has been holding fairly steadily around 1,000. As I said, the collaborations with Pakistan, India, and Malaysia. So this shows you a map of where the measurement agents are. There's a few in the US. There's a couple in Brazil. There's 1 in South Africa. There aren't too many measurement agents in Africa. Finding a site which would become a measurement agent is non-trivial. And there's in the United Kingdom, Pakistan, a collaborator, Malaysia, and Eastern Asia. So the beacons, a beacon is a site, is a target, is monitored by all the measurement agents, and they're shown in blue. You can see that we've got a pretty good coverage in most of the world. When you look at the targets which are monitored just by some monitors, then you can see actually we do cover the world pretty well. As I say, 800 to 1,000 different targets. Okay, the uses. One of the uses was to identify last mile problems. This was in Pakistan. I mentioned we had a collaborator in Pakistan. And the universities were concerned about how good their connectivity was. And they were getting to talk to their provider. The provider said, we've got a wonderful network. These days it was 150 kilobits a second, and it was hardly used, very low utilization, very good response time if you're talking to the edges of the network. But once you got to the last mile, it was worth it. And the problem was that they built a great network, but they hadn't connected the universities up. So we were able to deduce this and talk to the funding agency, which was the academic and education organization there. And then when they put up the next version of the network, we paid much more attention to the last mile. Another one is choosing an internet service provider, maybe for a home, who you want to use. Do you want to go with Comcast, or you want to go with whoever it is, and seeing how good the connectivity is to sites that you want to go to. Deciding where to site a service and where to access it. Hotmail, as you know, has multiple around the world, and they wanted to know where to put the repositories and how so they got a decent connectivity for their users, or collaboration data in the case of pioneering physics. And looking at another thing is discovering port routing, and I'll get to that in a minute. And also evaluating the impact of various things such as a cable cut, an earthquake, a tsunami, civil unrest, root leaks, or upgrading the general. So one of the things was to set expectations too. Is voice over IP going to work? Obviously it works now pretty damn well, but in the early days, voice over IP was kind of pushing the edges of the network, and actually would not necessarily work very well. We were monitoring it to see when will this country be able to go to using voice over IP. Maybe deciding where to invest in new networks, higher speed networks. Even the S-band treaty, people contacted us because they had a lot of sites measuring, looking for not earthquakes, but what happens after an explosion, a nuclear explosion underground, to see the waves which are propagated from that. And they wanted to know whether or not they would be able to get decent connectivity to the site which are going to get them access to the rest of the world. And the particular interest of mine was in the digital divide. And obviously out of all this, because we have 21 years worth of data, is actually just looking at the history of the internet. The number of countries which are now connected, when did they connect, how much is it improving, is it improving linearly, exponentially, and that happens that one can actually find that out. Next thing I want to go with, which I mentioned, was the use of geostationary links. A geostationary satellite runs around the world and actually is always above you, so to speak. So it's in order to be synchronous with where you're standing, it's about 24,000 miles up. So the signal going up to the satellite and coming back down and coming back up and down takes about 4 milliseconds. So this was in 2008. You can see on here the countries in red, Greenland, some parts of the Middle East, and a lot in Africa, and round trip times of 400 to 2,000 milliseconds, so 2 seconds. By 2013, you can see actually the number has dramatically reduced. There's just a few countries which still have poor connectivity, and there are a few countries which are in white, which actually we couldn't get any connectivity to. Congo, Brazzaville, Central African Republic, Myanmar. Central African Republic is still a problem. We still can't find any host to monitor there. Congo, Brazzaville, and Myanmar have been fixed in the meantime. In other words, we have monitoring sites. We're not monitoring targets which we measure in those countries. This shows you a bit more graphically what happened. Again, 2008. Anything above 400 milliseconds is almost certainly geostationary. You can see that there's a lot of blue, that's Africa. There's also a couple others, there's Afghanistan, there's French Polynesia, and I'm not sure which one that is there. But you can see by 2013, the width of that blue line on the left is dramatically increased. There's still a problem with the Solomon Islands, and there's still a problem with Afghanistan. But it's gone down an enormous amount by that time. So This shows you another way of looking at it, which is the data along the bottom, the round trip time to the left. You can see that Georgia in 2002 dropped from being a satellite link to being a terrestrial. You can see that, which one is this? This is Zimbabwe. I think that's Zimbabwe. But looking more recently, Nepal converts over in 2006. Congo, not until 2012, 2013. But you can actually detect when they stop using a terrestrial, a satellite link, geostationary satellite, and actually start using the fiber optics. And this is what it looks like in detail when this conversion happens. This was from Rwanda, and you can see that it was running at around 700 milliseconds round trip time, and then in 2009 they started working on getting using the fiber optic link, and you can see it dropped by from 700 to 500 for one direction was using fiber optics, and then they got the other direction using the fiber optics, and it dropped to 350, and then there were a few blips as they kind of iron out the details, but nowadays, of course, it's running at around 300 milliseconds. Okay, so another one we can look at is the impact of possible routes. So here we introduce a new parameter called alpha. The idea of alpha is to allow for delays in the network and also the indirectness compared to how a crow would fly or a great circle route of the route. So d is the one-way distance, and that one-way distance is equal to alpha. If alpha is equal to 1, then the distance is the round trip time divided by 2 times 200 kilometers per second per millisecond, which is the speed of light in the fiber. You're able to reduce from that the distance. Turning the equation around, you can find out what alpha is, because it's not a great circle route. So if you know the latitude and longitude of the monitor and the remote host, then you can find or find the distance. So knowing the minimum round trip time, one can then estimate alpha. The maximum alpha can only be, it has to be less than or equal to 1, and that's a direct great circle route, and there's no network delays. So if you get an alpha, probably you identifies that the site that you're monitoring is not where you think it is. And that happens quite a lot. I mean, you're monitoring a site, let's say, somewhere in Africa, and you find out that it's maybe 20 milliseconds away from SLAC. And what that means is there's a proxy for that university or whatever it is, which is in the US. Low values mean very indirect routes, or slow, or satellite connection, maybe a wireless connection. Alpha is about 0.45. Okay, so now let's look at what we see. So on the left, we see the Pacific Ocean. Routes between SLAC and Asia and Australia are pretty direct. So you go through Hawaii or you go directly across the Pacific, and you get alphas of about 0.71, 72, 73. However, if you start to look at, say, from Germany, where you're trying to get to Egypt, then it has to go around the Bay of Biscay, through the Straits of Gibraltar, through the Mediterranean, and eventually it gets to Egypt. And alpha is dropped 0.34. Going to India, it's a bit more direct from Egypt to India, just go down the Red Sea and across the Indian Ocean, and you get to India with an alpha of about 0.41. Getting to China, 0.32, Australia, about 0.53, but Novosibirsk in Russia, which is just a hop from the red to the blue, you think it goes straight across, it doesn't, it goes all this way around, and alpha is about 0.18 in that case. So this gives you a pretty good indication of where the routes are. Of course, coming to our rescue, or maybe not, is global warming, which will give us possibly getting from, say, Tokyo to London or Tokyo to Sweden. Another thing which is interesting is nowadays, of course, most voice conversations, most telephone conversations are actually made over internet links, as opposed to particular copper links used for voice. So the question has been over the years, well, where will voice over IP work for you when you're communicating with? So there's an International Telecommunications Union, they developed a metric which is based on the quality of a conversation. They sit a person down in the room, put a headset on and a speaker in his mouth, and then they play things with putting in different delays and different jitter and different loss, and ask them how good it is. That was how it was originally done, but actually now they set up an equation which you just derive it from the round trip time, the jitter. If you got a number of 4, it's good. The maximum number you can get is 5, which should be perfect. So if it's great news before, you've got good connectivity, 3 to 4 it's fair, and 2 to 3 is poor. That's the mean opinion score. So this is what it looks like over time. You can see that by 2001, Europe, East Asia had the ability to have voice over IP over the internet. Russia joined the club in 2003, 2004. Australia joined around the same time. Australasia maybe joined in about 2006. And then South Asia and Central Asia about 2010, 2011. And Africa was getting close in 2012. Many countries in Africa now can use voice over IP. So the next one we want to do, try and deduce from the measurements that we're making would be the we can get. So there's a relatively famous equation developed by a group led by Mathis, who's now, I believe, at Google, in 1997, which basically said that the derived TCP throughput is equal to the packet size multiplied by 8 bits per byte, divided by the round trip time and the square root of the loss. This of course is for TCP. TCP keeps sending data, forces a loss, and it backs off, and then it starts to build up again until it forces a loss, and so you get this kind of sawtooth thing. But TCP actually is, to some extent, forcing its own losses, so it can see what's going on. In our case, we're just putting packets onto the network, and they're very, very lightweight, so they don't force any packet loss. So later on, we want to figure out whether or not we can use that formula, and I'll come back to that in a minute. What you see here is a graph of the throughput in kilobits per second as calculated using this formula, where the round trip time is the minimum round trip time measured by Pinger, and the square root of the loss is the loss rate measured by Pinger. So you can see that the countries with the higher throughputs regions with higher throughput are Europe, Australasia, and North America. Also, North America is not shown here. Okay. And then after that, we get ones in green, which includes Southeast Asia, Middle East, and Latin America. And then bringing up the rear is South Asia and Africa. Now you notice this kink here, just about here. You can see the line before the kink was actually from the developed nation. Not only is it much lower, magnitude and a half below, also it was not catching up, so things were getting worse. So, but it looks like a kink happens there. So let me just move ahead. So the kink was actually the World Cup, the soccer World Cup in South Africa, during which the put in several new fiber optic undersea fiber optic links down the west and the east coast of Africa to get to South Africa, and hence provide a big improvement in speed between 2008 when they started putting, 2009 started putting these links, to 2013-14 when the links were already installed. The goal was obviously to get it in place for 2010, which was the... Okay, so the top four in North America, East Asia, Australasia, and Europe. And then the ones behind are Russia, Latin America, Middle East, Southeast, 12 to 14 years. Behind is South and Central Asia. But unfortunately, as you can see, Africa has not continued that improvement. And over the last few years, it's actually tailed off. So things are not looking good in general for Africa. Obviously, Africa is a huge countries in Africa, about 1 billion people. So it's obviously very important. And actually characterizing Africa by one measurement is not the way to go. One needs to do it by a country. But I could bore you forever going through all that. Another thing we can look at is correlations. The United Nations, the various economic indices, the United Nations Development Project has what's called a Human Development Index, which basically they look at each country, the long and healthy life as measured by life expectancy, the knowledge is measured by adult literary rate, and the number of primary and secondary school students, and a decent standard of living is measured by the GDP. And this is what it looks like. The HDI is here, it runs from 0 to 1. The normalized throughput measured along here. Notice this is a log scale along the bottom axis. And you can see how Africa, you can see some of the countries marked, Ethiopia, Niger, Burkina Faso, all in light blue. Africa brings up the tail. You can see that Canada and the US are doing very well. Europe's doing pretty well too. On the size of the dots is the population, which is, so the intent is to show how much it matters in that sense. So there's a clear correlation between the UNDP Development Index and the throughput. So this is one way to look at what's going on. Another thing to look at was the performance versus the fertility rate. Fertility rate obviously has a lot to do with the future. I'll come to that in a second. This shows you the fertility rate of various countries in the world. You can see some countries, in particular in Africa, children within the family, 5 to 6 or 4 to 5 children. Developed nations tend to be 1 to 2 children, and in places like, in many countries, several countries, especially in Europe, the actual population is decreasing, I believe, in Italy, for example, and to some extent they're relying on immigrants. So fertility rate, in turn, drives the population growth, and predicts the world population by 2100 will almost double up to 11 billion. It's around 7 billion today. And this is driven by Africa, whose population is currently about 1 billion, but could exceed 6 billion by 2100. And achieving significant fertility declines requires education and access to information. And we hope the Internet's a major enabler in this. So it's very interesting to look at the correlation of the fertility rate versus the derived throughput that we get from peanut. And you can see countries in Africa such as Niger, Burkina Faso, Zambia have very high birth rates, roughly 5, 6 or 7, whereas developed nations are much smaller. So this kind of indicates that it's very important to get better education to these areas, which in turn could be having better internet connectivity to these areas. Okay, now I'll go to looking at the impact of certain events. So this was an undersea cable cut near Egypt in 2008. What happened was the cable was damaged near Alexandria, Egypt, and another off the waters of Marseille. And you may ask, why did two get? There was a storm in the Mediterranean, so that was why they happened at the same time. Damage within hours reached each other on January 30th. Operators believe the damage was caused by ship's anchors dragging in the heavy storm at the sea. So over here, we see performance. Light blue means 0 to 400 milliseconds, green 400 to 800, then 800 to 1200, etc. And the dates, you can see all of a sudden, around the 29th of January, something happened. And what happens was this outage caused by dragging the ship's anchors against the cables. And looking at the impact of one site going there, you can see there's hardly any impact on the Malvinas, Sri Lanka, maybe one host in India, and maybe in Bhutan. Bangladesh, on the other hand, BD, that's a country. Bangladesh up there, the orange, obviously was hit by it. Then again, the Middle East got hit. Oman, Jordan, Bahrain, Arab Emirates, and Sudan and Djibouti, Africa. All of those got badly hit by this cut in the cables. And this was in 2008. Come back to that in a minute. Another one was a Chilean earthquake, February 27, 2010. We were monitoring two hosts today. Both were in Santiago, about 240 miles from the epicenter. When the earthquake hit, everything went dark. Packets, there was no data coming through for several hours, and then things came back online, but it didn't come back very well. Here, everything's running with 0% loss. Here, the loss rates are going up 5%, 10%. So there's a long recovery time while they were recovering. This was the famous Japanese earthquake and tsunami off the coast of Japan. At 8.9 magnitude, Friday, March 11th, 2011. Internet connectivity to the host Pinger monitors was maintained. So here is the round trip time. None of the hosts go away, but suddenly the round trip time shoots up. And I'll come back to that. So one thing to learn from this is they had very good resiliency. Even though they had an earthquake, things kept working, but there were big increases in the round trip time. And that was because they had deployed multiple new trans-Pacific cables and intra-Asian for years, and they prevented this disaster from disrupting communications entirely. But what happened was that the cable that went from Japan going east towards SLAC, towards SLAC to the US, I think it cut. And so the route, instead of going west, going to the US, went the other way around the world, went westwards around the world and got to it. And so you see this huge increase in round trip time for the people who are using that fiber. Here's a different type of thing. There was a massive route leak by Telecom Malaysia starting 8:43 June 12, 2015, which caused significant problems in the system. And you can see the impact on Malaysia went from roughly 150 say 200 milliseconds as measured from SLAC to roughly 500 or 600 millisecond round trip time while they fixed up this routing problem. Then more recently, there's been it's not that the network is failed. What people are trying to do is to maybe shut down the internet because they may be impacting other things. So Benin shut down the internet following the execution of the government order on the day of an election. They didn't want everybody reading their iPhones or whatever it was, or getting on the internet to figure things out. On the other hand, according to Amnesty, it effectively silenced human rights bloggers who were monitoring contested parliamentary elections without opposition. And the impact is quite dramatic. You see, they shut it down, it comes back. And they're not the only country who's done something like that. Mauritania, around about also this year. There's significant internet disruption starting in 1530, following controversy surrounding presidential elections over the weekend. The packet loss goes from, if you look here, you can see here, this is the time, this is a 180 milliseconds round trip time, this should be 300. You can see everything's running along quite nicely, some blips there, and then shut down, and then it's brought back after the election. Similar thing in Ethiopia, this time during a coup attempt, and again the hands were 100% loss, and then came back again. And then Syria, this is a kind of strange thing, they were having exams. And I guess somebody must have thought, well, if you're in an exam, you might have your iPhone down doing this, getting the answer to the questions. So they shut down the internet for all of Syria, and you can see when the exams happened, at these times there was 100% loss. So they were going on over about 8 separate days. The internet just shut down. Okay, so I'd like to go into a little bit about validation of some of the things, and some comparison to other measurements. So this was some early work we did back in 1999, sorry. We wanted to confirm that the statement I made that we can deduce the throughput using pings, using the math. And the concern was, well, math is, TCP forces losses. Ping doesn't force losses, it just sends a packet. TCP sends packets until it deliberately forces a loss and then backs off and then starts again. So, is this going to work, what we're doing? And so what I'm showing here are are measurements made using the throughput from ping, and also using a tool known as test TCP, TTCP, which actually measures the real throughput. And so we made these measurements. We got our space flight center to Los Alamos, and you can see the dots of the TTCP measurements. The ping using pings is shown here, and I would say it's a pretty downward agreement. And if we plot the predicted maximum TCP using ping versus the actual TCP throughput, you get a pretty strong correlation between the two. There are a lot of measuring throughput. And there's many websites that enable testing speed or link. Probably most of you use it sometime or something called speed test by Cottrell. And some of the tests also provide not just fixed links, ours are all fixed links. We don't have any mobile measurements. And they also provide upload and download speeds. And a few provide data by country. And one or two actually provide data for up to 3 recent years. Some find the capacity of the link by flooding it. There's a Cable, it's a company called Cable in the UK, which is part of the SLAC collaboration, that actually does this using something called MDT, which pushes as fast as it can data over a single TCP connection from the source to the destination. Compared to that, we have two data. We have fixed measurement sites. We're very lightweight. Cable MLab just tries to send as much data as it possibly can using a single TCP stream. So it can be, it's the difference between, in our case, if you're trying to measure how good the freeway is working, we'll put a single motorbike and they'll put a big truck on the network and see how much data we can get through. So there's a little bit of difference between the two methods. We also have, as I say, we're very lightweight, and so typically we can get less data, we can carry less data on the motorbike compared to carrying it on in a big truck. So there's typically an order of magnitude difference in the measurements. Also, the speed has multiple measurement sites all around the world. I'll come to that in a minute. Whereas we're just measuring from SLAC. So if you're making a measurement to say at home in say Malaysia, you're probably measuring from somewhere in the Southeast Asia. And so it's going to be a much smaller round trip time and therefore much better throughput. Also, as network improves, losses decrease. And no loss this is a problem with Pinger. No loss in a month is a loss rate of 0.007%. And in a year, no loss between a source and a destination in the 172,800 packets, which is sending 10 packets every 30 minutes, gives you a bit error rate loss of 0.005, sorry, not bit error rate, packet losses of 0.0058%. And very close to the bit error rate that you actually get on fibers. So that is becoming a problem for Pinger, that we don't send enough pings to some developed countries to be able to get enough losses, or we can only take data which has been measured for a whole year before we can get sufficient losses. This is some tests with, say, they have monitoring sites all over the world. The little insert to the left, with all the green dots, shows you where the monitoring sites are, so that when you ask for what is the speed test result from a host that's say in Tahoe, it will choose a site somewhere in California to make the measurement to it. So if you look at the speed test measurement, you see we go with, this is kilobits per second, so we tip this up to 12 megabits per second. And you can see the on this one is the normalized derived throughput that you get from using Pinger, and you can see there's a correlation. If you're interested in statistics, the R-squared is roughly 0.53. Looking at Africa, that's the red. It was not so good in these days. Okay, so now let's talk about the data that we've got. So the data has always been in the public domain. It's accessible by anonymous FTP. There are replicas. If one wants a replica site, one could copy all the data down to the replica site and then update it daily from the SLAC master. We have tools for doing that. Yes. There's 21 years of data involving actually 1,000 targets, because over the years targets that come and go, so to speak. So the total number of targets is probably close to 1,500. And almost 100 measurement agents but it's now in its sunset stage, I would say. The space allocated is roughly a terabyte. The raw data is roughly 300 gigabytes or 271 files. The analyzed data is 100 gigabytes, 32,000 files. and the analyzed data is filtered for errors, impossible round-trip times, corrupt data, and target bonded for a long time. So the analyzed data is much more curated and reliable. In terms of finding targets, we tend to prefer educational websites. And the reason for that is the initial impetus for high end physics was universities and national labs, because they were the people who were collaborating in high end physics. The sites appear to stick around longer. Some sites come like within a year. And there's also, if you go to Wikipedia, you can find a lot of information about, let's say, the National University of Science and Technology in Pakistan. And usually the website is publicly accessible, and so you can look at the website, find out where it's located, and you can find out maybe find out contacts there. So to choose a site, we need to know its latitude and longitude, the country, whether it responds to pings, and whether or not it has a publicly available internet IP address. This can be IPv4 or V6. Location is tricky because even though it will say this university is in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, or something like that, you may find that actually the website has a proxy in Europe or in North America, and therefore it's not any use to us. Okay, so that's it. Any questions?